people who get rich slowly think completely differently from everyone else. It's less about money and more about psychology. Here's what sets them apart. They're not louder, smarter, or luckier than the people around them. They're just wired differently in a few quiet ways. They don't chase, they don't panic, they don't need the world to know what they're building. And if you watch them for a week, you probably think their life looked boring. That's the point. Boring to their brain feels like safety, and safety is where compounding lives. Because here's what most people never realize about wealth. Money isn't built by big moves. It's built by a nervous system that can sit still while everyone else is reacting. That's the real skill, and it's completely learnable. So let's walk through the quiet psychology behind it, one principle at a time, because each one rewires how your brain handles time, risk, and reward. The first principle is that they treat urgency as a warning sign, not a green light. Most people feel urgency and lean in. Their brain flows with dopamine, the chemical that pushes you toward action, and suddenly, the deal, the trend, the opportunity feels like something they have to grab now. Slow wealth people feel that same rush, but they've trained themselves to pause. They know dopamine spikes are not signals of truth. They're signals of temptation. In neuroscience, this pause is the prefrontal cortex stepping in, the part of your brain responsible for long-term thinking. When you delay a reaction by even 60 seconds, you shift decision-making away from impulse and back into judgment. The practical version is simple. When something feels urgent, wait a day. If it's still smart tomorrow, it was smart. If it's not, you just saved yourself from a decision your future self would have quietly regretted, and the payoff is bigger than money. Your brain slowly learns that missing out is not dangerous, which is the exact belief most people never install. The second principle is that they're addicted to boring inputs. Most people want their money life to feel exciting, but excitement is the enemy of compounding. Your brain releases dopamine when things are novel, unpredictable, emotional, which is why volatile investments feel so magnetic and slow. Steady ones feel like nothing. Slow wealth people have learned to find quiet satisfaction in the boring version, the automatic transfer, the unglamorous index, the savings rate they don't touch, the routine they don't renegotiate. The brain science here is neuroplasticity, the ability of your brain to rewire itself around whatever you repeat. When you make the boring behavior consistent, your brain starts to code it as identity, not effort. It stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like who you are. You can start today by picking one boring financial habit and making it invisible. Automate it. Remove the decision. Let repetition do what willpower can't. And here's what most people get wrong about this. They think slow wealth people are more disciplined. They're not. They've just designed a life where discipline isn't required. The third principle is that they protect their attention like it's the actual asset. Because it is. Every notification, every hot take, every panicked headline is competing for the one resource that determines your decisions, and your brain, without training, will hand attention to whatever's loudest. Slow wealth people are strangely quiet online. They don't watch markets hourly. They don't consume financial drama for entertainment. They know that constant input creates constant reaction, and reaction is where money leaks out. Neuroscience calls this the default mode network, the background system in your brain that runs when you're not being pulled by input. It's where reflection, planning, and long-term thinking actually happen. Noise shuts it down. Silence turns it back on. Try this. Pick 1 hour a day where your phone is in another room and your money decisions get to breathe. That single hour is where clarity lives. The quiet benefit is that your best financial decisions start showing up on their own without stress, because your brain finally has room to think. The fourth principle is that they treat their nervous system as part of their portfolio, because stress makes you poor. Not metaphorically, neurologically. When cortisol, your main stress hormone, is high, your brain narrows. It focuses on immediate threats, immediate relief, immediate fixes. You sell when you shouldn't. You buy what feels safe emotionally instead of what's actually safe financially. You confuse comfort with wisdom. Wealth people manage cortisol on purpose. They sleep, they walk, they eat like their decisions depend on it, because they do. They know a regulated nervous system is worth more than any strategy, because strategy fails in a panicked body. You don't need a routine that looks impressive. You need a routine that keeps your baseline calm. 10 minutes of walking, a consistent bedtime, one meal that isn't rushed, small inputs, huge downstream effects. And here's the part almost nobody talks about. When your body is calm, you naturally stop making the desperate decisions that keep most people broke. Wealth becomes a byproduct of regulation, not effort. The fifth principle is that they think in decades while everyone else thinks in weeks. Your brain, by default, is terrible at long time horizons. It's called temporal discounting, and it means the further away a reward is, the less real it feels. That's why saving for 30 years from now feels weaker than buying something today. Slow wealth people have trained the opposite instinct. They make the future feel close. They think about who they'll be at 50, 60, 70, and treat that version of themselves like a real person they owe something to. The way to build this is small and specific. Once a week, write down one decision you're making that your 10 years older self would thank you for. Just one. That single practice starts stretching your brain's sense of time. And once your brain believes the future is real, patience stops being a struggle. It becomes the obvious move. The sixth principle is that they've made peace with being underestimated. Most people spend money to look wealthy. Slow wealth people spend energy to actually be wealthy, which usually means looking completely ordinary. They drive the older car, they live below what they could. They don't announce their wins. Not because they're humble in some performative way, but because they understand something most people miss. Every time you signal wealth, you spend some of it. Every time you protect the appearance of not having it, you keep more. Psychologically, this is huge. It removes the exhausting need for external validation, which is one of the biggest silent drains on both energy and money. Your brain stops chasing status hits and starts chasing something quieter, self-respect built from actual behavior. You can practice this by picking one thing you were going to buy this month to impress someone, even subtly, and not buying it. Notice what happens. Nothing. And that nothing is the freedom people spend their whole lives trying to reach. The seventh principle is that they don't try to be right. They try to stay in the game. Most people want to win. Slow wealth people want to not lose. That sounds small, but neurologically it's the difference between a brain that survives and a brain that spirals. Loss aversion is the well-documented fact that losses hurt roughly twice as much as gains feel good. Most people fight this by trying to swing bigger. Slow wealth people work with it by protecting their downside first, always. They don't bet everything on one idea. They don't stake their identity on being right about a prediction. They keep their exposure small enough that no single mistake can end their run. The application is simple. Before any decision, ask what happens if this doesn't work. If the answer is, I lose a little and keep going, proceed. If the answer is, I'm wiped out, walk away no matter how good the story sounds. And this is the habit that gives compounding its runway. You can't compound if you're forced out of the game. Everything else is optional. Staying in isn't. The eighth principle, and the one that quietly runs all the others, is that they made their identity boring on purpose. Most people want to feel like the main character. Their brain is wired for narratives, for arc, for drama, for a version of themselves that's constantly becoming something new. Slow wealth people stepped out of that story a long time ago. They're not trying to be interesting. They're trying to be consistent. And consistency, done for long enough, becomes the most interesting outcome of all. Because when your identity is calm, your decisions get calm. When your decisions get calm, your money gets calm. And calm money is the only kind that actually grows. If you take one thing from all of this, let it be this. Getting rich slowly is not a strategy you follow. It's a nervous system you build. The habits, the patience, the boring inputs, the quiet exterior, they're all downstream of one thing, a brain that has stopped confusing motion with progress. So maybe, quietly, ask yourself which of these you already have and which one you're avoiding. Because usually the one you're avoiding is the one that would change the most. Which of these hit closest to home for you? Tell me in the comments. I read them, and the patterns you share often shape the next scripts on this channel. If this landed, you'll probably want the video I made on the quiet habits that separate mentally strong people from everyone else. It pairs with this one almost perfectly. And if you're new here, this is what we do every week. Practical, brain-based habits explained in plain language. No hype, no noise. Subscribe and turn on notifications so the next one finds you when you actually need it. Because slow isn't behind. Slow is early. You just have to be quiet enough to notice.